Hi everyone at Bibliobuzz, it's Kirsty Applebaum here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my book, The Middler, and I'm going to read to you from The Middler as well. And then after that, I'm going to be setting you a challenge. But I'm going to start off with The Middler. The Middler tells the story of an 11-year-old girl called Maggie Cruz, and she lives in a town called Fenniswick, and Fenniswick has a boundary all the way around it, and no one is allowed out and no one is allowed in. I'm going to start off by reading you the prologue, which is very short. It's just 4 sentences long, and it goes like this. Our eldest, Jed, got born first out of all of us. Our youngest, Trig, he got born 4 years later. And me, Maggie, I was in between, the middler, worse luck. So we know from that prologue that Maggie is a middle child and that she's not all that happy about it. And the reason she's not happy about it is that in her town, Fenniswick, only the eldest children are considered special. Now, the middler's set at the end of a long, hot summer, and it's the first day back to school after the summer holidays. And in chapter 1, we follow Maggie and her brothers, Jed and Trig, to school, and they have an assembly there. And during this assembly, the mayor comes in, and the mayor has a very important announcement to make. She says that wanderers have been spotted close to the town boundary. Now, this is really frightening news. Maggie's scared, but not just Maggie, the whole school is scared. The mayor says that the wanderers are dirty, dangerous, and deceitful, and she keeps repeating it. She says they're dirty, dangerous, and deceitful. But the way to keep yourself safe, she says, is to never go beyond the boundary. However, what does Jed want to do as soon as he gets home? He wants to go straight down to that boundary, hunting for wanderers. And Maggie's scared, but because Jed's the eldest, of course, they go with him. So Maggie, Jed, their younger brother Trig, and another friend of theirs, Lindy, who's also an eldest just like Jed, go down to the part of town where the boundary is made up of a hawthorn hedge. And that's the part I'm going to read to you now. After school, we changed out of our uniforms and went up to the cemetery, right out near the hawthorn boundary, hunting for wanderers. It was Jed's idea. Come on, he called down. Who's coming up next? He was balanced in the tallest tree, legs dappled by the leaves and the sun. Looked like he was wearing camouflage. The branches rippled in the heat. Me and Trig and Lindy all squinted up. Look! Jed pointed south, past the red-berried hawthorn. Grandad Cruz's watch glinted on his wrist. I can see for miles. My heart kadunk, kadunk, kadunked under my t-shirt. Can you see any wanderers? Trig shaded his eyes with both hands. Course not yet, said Jed. We've got to watch and wait. He was really high. My stomach swirled just looking at him. Do you think the mayor will give us a reward? I shaded my eyes too. You know, if we find one, will she read out our names in assembly? Jed laughed. You're never going to spot one, Maggie. You're just a middler. You're too scared to even climb up here. Yeah, you're always too scared of everything. Lindy elbowed me and Trig out of the way. Watch out, Jed. I'm coming up next. Jed grinned. It was his idea of heaven, sitting on a branch with Lindy all to himself. She walked between the 2 graves set under the tree. The headstones had ancient names carved into them, William Whittington and Georgina Millicent Cruz. Georgina Millicent Cruz was my great-great-great-great-grandmother. Funny how the cemetery smelled of grass and soil and sap-laden trees when actually we were surrounded by old dead relatives. Lindy got a knotty handhold on the trunk and found somewhere to put her first foot. She pulled herself up and found a second foothold, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. She didn't have shorts on like me. She was wearing a stupid white dress that showed her underwear if she even just climbed over a stile. She was nearly up to Jed. My mouth went dry. They were right. I was scared. Of climbing, of hunting for wanderers, of everything. So what, though? So what? We were never going to find one anyway. Jed held out his hand to Lindy. She grabbed it. She leaned away from the trunk and let go with her other hand. Her foot slipped on the dry bark. Their hands slid apart. Her stupid dress blew up around her waist. She bounced head first off the William Whittington gravestone and landed on the ground, blood all over her face. She lay there, still as you like. The sound her head made on the gravestone replayed itself in my ears. Crunk, like being whacked with a brick. Crunk. Her pants were white with little blue flowers on them, forget-me-nots. I stepped forwards and pulled her dress down. It wasn't right for the boys to be seeing all that. No one screamed. No one shouted. Jed said something unrepeatable, but he said it really quiet, like his voice had been squashed by the shock. Then he half scrambled, half jumped down from the tree. He tried pulling Lindy up, but he couldn't lift her. Her blood got all over his hands. He pushed his hair out of his eyes and left a messy red stripe across the side of his head. "Lindy," he said in his squashed voice. "Lindy, Lindy, Lindy." "She's dead," I said. "No, she's not. She can't be," said Jed. "We have to do something." And we stood there, all three of us cruise kids, looking down at Lindy Chowdhury with her white dress and her bloody face and her long dark hair spread out on the grass. "You have to check if she's breathing." It was Trig, who can't even run or hop or tie proper reef knots. "If she's not, you have to breathe for her. First aid, we did it in school, remember, ages ago." He swallowed. "And one of us has to run for help." Jed knelt down next to Lindy. "I'm not leaving her. You go, Maggie." "Me?" "Quick, Maggie, you've got to run." So I ran. So that was from chapter 2 of The Middler. Okay, so are you ready for your writing challenge? Here it is. When I was writing The Middler, it started off, it wasn't called The Middler, it was called something completely different. And it wasn't written from the middle child's point of view. It was actually written from an eldest child's point of view. And it wasn't really quite working. I was writing lots of words and the story was sort of there, but it wasn't quite right. And I suddenly remembered an exercise I'd done in a class at school, an English class, where we had been asked to rewrite a Greek myth from the point of view of an unusual character, a character that we wouldn't usually hear their point of view. And I suddenly remembered this and I thought, maybe I could do this with my book. And I decided then to write it from the middle child's point of view. And I wrote the prologue and I started writing and I found that suddenly it was all coming together. I suddenly had a voice and I had a title, The Middler, that came to me as well. So sometimes when you look at a story from a different character's point of view, it can be quite interesting and it can produce some really fantastic writing. So what I want you to do is think about the story of the three little pigs and the big bad wolf. And I want you to choose a character, maybe the first little pig who builds their house from straw, or the second little pig who builds their house from sticks, or the third little pig who builds the house of bricks, or maybe the big bad wolf itself. And I want you to choose a character and then rewrite a little bit of the story from that character's point of view. Now you could choose a bit from the beginning of the story or the middle or the end, and it doesn't even really matter if you can't remember the story very well, because you don't have to stick to the original tale. You can make it up, you can be as crazy as you like. I'd like you to write it in first person, so as if you are that character you've chosen. And I've got a little example, just a few lines that I wrote here. I peeped out between the bushes and saw 3 little pigs strolling down the road. 3 delicious little pigs, happy as can be. My stomach rumbled. I smiled a secret, hungry smile. So that, of course, was from the wolf's point of view. So before you start, you might want to get your creative juices flowing by asking yourself a few questions. And here are some questions you could ask. What sort of mood is your character in? Happy, worried, excited, scared? Does their mood change throughout your little bit of writing, throughout your scene? If your character has a mood change, that can really help to hold your reader's attention. What does your character see and smell and touch and hear and taste during your scene? If your character is one of the pigs, why did your pig choose straw or sticks or bricks, depending on which one they chose? What are your character's hopes and dreams? What are their biggest fears? How does your character feel towards the other 3 main characters? What will your character be trying to do in your scene? Will something stop them? So if you have something or someone stopping your character, stopping them achieving what they're trying to achieve, this can make for quite an exciting piece of writing. Are there any other characters in your scene? Bringing in another character can liven up a piece of writing, and it can also give you a nice opportunity to write a bit of dialogue. So that's your writing challenge. You can post your pieces below, and you can also post any questions you have there as well. I'd like to say a huge thank you and well done to everyone who's taken part in Bibliobuzz. I really hope you enjoyed reading the books. Good luck with the writing challenge. I'm really looking forward to reading your pieces, so choose a character and get writing.